great to be back again. Lois mentioned sending in your paintings afterwards. I really do like to see those, and whether they've worked for you on the day or they only worked in part or whatever, please send them in. They're great. And I think everybody else likes to just see what other people are doing. And today especially will be a good one to send them in, and you'll understand why in just a moment. The last time I was here, we painted a Suffolk sunrise, and it was Suffolk being in the east of England, the flatlands of England there. It was all sky, and in the sun rising, and we're doing something similar today in that we are doing something that is very much about skies, but we're in Scotland, the countryside is very different, and indeed the atmosphere is very different as well. So I'm going to talk about that atmospheric thing in just a moment. I'm going to talk about essentially the light. Now, there are one or two people who haven't been here before. Just let me skip through the materials I'm using, and please, if whilst I'm doing this demonstration, you have any queries on the materials, please do ask them. But the paper that I'm using is a rag watercolor paper. It's actually by Saunders Waterford, but there are lots of very good makes. The point is that it is rag content, rag quality, which gives it a greater absorbency than many other papers that are not so. You can paint watercolors on pretty much any paper, but this is a great one, and I'm actually splitting the larger sheet of paper that I normally use into two separate paintings today, which I'll explain why in just a moment. So the paper.
What is the dimension of the large piece?
Yeah, the large piece is about 16 inches by 11. And the two pieces that I'm splitting them into are 11 by 8, very roughly. I'm sure I'll mention it again, but I'm kind of expecting that you will do one painting today, not attempt to do two. And I'll explain why I'm doing two in just a moment. Just on the materials again, the next thing from paper is the paints, and these are all artist quality paints. Most of them are Winsor and Newton, but I've got a couple of other types here. I've got a Daniel Smith and I've got a De La Rowney here as well. But they're wherever possible, I try and get my paints to be transparent or semi-transparent. I think they're all either transparent or semi-transparent, except for this color here, which I will be using today, which is cerulean. I will talk and mention the name of each of the paints as I use them, but Lois did send out in the information to you a picture of this palette of mine, which is the same palette, annotated with the colors. The only one that wasn't on there was this one, which is Windsor Orange, and I'm not going to be using it today anyway. I'm still experimenting with that one. So this is on some sort of a aluminium palette. I squeeze with tubes the paint in as I replenish them. It's the same quality as using a pan, but I just find it easier to have some tubes in a drawer, which I just top up with as I go along. And then the third and last thing I want to just briefly mention, again, I will speak about each of these when I use them, are the brushes. I might even be using all of these today, are the brushes that I've got here, which are watercolor brushes. They're all at the cheaper end of brushes. I find that the longer I've been painting, the more I go for cheaper brushes, rather than spending a lot of money on brushes. But I mean, that's another chat, that is, if you want to, on the brushes. But those are my brushes, and that's the materials and the equipment and the brushes I just thought I'd run through with you before we get going. Also, before we get going, a word on the method that I'll be using today, which is the same as I have used practically every other session I've done, which is I will split the paintings that I'm doing up into 4 stages. I'll hopefully go slowly enough so that you can paint along with me when you feel confident enough to do so. And I will also pause at the end of each of these steps so that you can catch up, and we'll try and get you caught up before we move on, so that you're not tripping over yourself on all of this. But Lois is recording this, so should you need to just refresh yourself and go back, there is also always that option. Now I'm doing, this is the source picture that I've got here, which I've sent out to you, which is on the island of Gigha. Interestingly enough, there's some friends of ours had a farm there, and we've stayed there before, but they have since sold that farm, unfortunately. But I just love Scotland. I love the changing light, with the mountains around and so forth. It's never the same. It's just wonderful, and the light is turning it. And this photograph, this source photograph, is just caught at a certain moment. I mean, 5 minutes later, and could have been very different. But what I like about this, and the reason I've chosen it, is because it very much shows that it is the light in the sky and what's going on in the sky with that light that directs the atmosphere of the painting. Last time I was here, we had the bright light coming up in the early morning over the sea in Suffolk, and that was doing all sorts of things in fact, there wasn't a landscape as such, it was just the sea, but it was doing all sorts of things. Here, the light that's in the sky with the clouds and the breaks in the clouds are doing something else. And I think what is fascinating about, say, focusing on something where there's a lot of sky, or the sky is very important, is that it really, in a sense, when you're painting skies, it kind of doesn't matter what you do in one sense, because there's no fixed sky. There's no one going to come along and check that you've got the sky right, because it's never the same twice in any case. But that's an interesting little consideration here. Now, the reason that I'm going for 2 paintings at once, and I have to say, my friends, that I've never done this before. Oh, I've painted two at the same time occasionally. I don't much like doing it. The way that I've normally done it is had a piece of paper on the board on one side and had a piece of paper on the board on the other side, and I've done a painting where I'm painting on one side, and then I'll flip it over and paint on that side. And whilst I'm doing that, what's on the other side has pretty well dried, so I can switch back. But it's not something I'm very very happy to do here. The reason that I'm doing 2 paintings today is because someone who shall be nameless said to me a while ago, "Oh, I don't really like doing landscapes. They don't really overexcite me and so forth." And that's fair enough. But I do know a lot of people do like doing landscapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, probably up the top here, I'm going to treat this painting as a whole landscape, pretty much what you see on the source photograph. And then in the other painting, see if I can show you this. In the other painting, I'm going to focus in on the building here. I'll talk to you about the building in a moment, and do something. They're both going to be landscape paintings, landscape in format, that is. So I'm going to come in and do something a bit like that. So the composition is going to change. I'm going to use pretty much the same paints throughout so that I can get through this in time I'm not overrunning. So I'm going to be looking at something a bit more like that, maybe a bit more sky. So the focus in the first one will be the whole landscape. And the focus in the second one will be much more on the cottage. And then one last thing before we get going. This was a cottage that was being built for someone when I got there. And I think the light is bouncing off it very much because this is probably insulation they've got there. They haven't put the tiles on the roof or whatever. But these are the cottages. You get an awful lot of these on the Isle of Gigha. And in my painting, you're very welcome to work it like this if you wish. But in the painting I'm going to do of this cottage, I'm going to treat it much more like this. Now, Lois did send in a photograph of this, and what I think I've got room to, let me see if I can do this. I think I've got room to have it off to one side, just in case you were wanting to have a reference as this goes on. And I've got this, or you've all seen this, you've all got pictures, and it's not really necessary that I have them out, but I will bring them out. But the cottage itself, I'll put there for the moment. Right, so I'm going to begin with the first of my 4 steps that I've spoken of, and that is thinking about the composition and making a drawing of it. I have done a practice painting for each of these. I do that always before I do any teaching, and that's always quite informative. And one of the things I've found, particularly in terms of composition and balancing things, is that as my painting went on, I just felt I needed to put something here a little bit just to balance this building. And in fact, I made up a telegraph pole. And in fact, I've actually made up a couple of other little things in here as well, which you may not want to do. So I'm thinking composition-wise that I'm going to have my building slightly to the left. I'm going to have some space here, but I'm aware that I might need to in some way balance that. And for the one which is a close-up, I found in my practice one that I still needed to do some sort of juggling with what was there. And so I'll explain that as I go on. Just a reminder on this one that I'm really not expecting you to do 2 paintings at once. In fact, don't try this at home unless you really want to. You do whichever painting you want of whichever composition that I'm, or something in between the 2, whatever you like. You do whatever you want, and I will do the 2 separate. It'll be fascinating, I'm sure, just to see how the 2 develop together, because there's stuff that I will use which is common to both of them, and some few things I might have to use differently. And that's why I said, lastly, it would be really nice to have the paintings you've done sent in, because we're more likely than normal to have a variety of compositions coming in, either close-ups of the building or building further away and so forth. Okay, right. First step then involves doing some drawing, and as usual, I will do as little drawing as I can get away with. I'm in terms of the perspective here, I always talk about where my eye level is. I reckon my eye level runs something along the line of the top of the building, somewhere like that. So everything above the top of the building is above my eye level, and below it is below my eye level. It doesn't actually feature quite so much in this. Well, it features a little bit in all of them. It's important to be aware of that, but not a great deal. So I'm going to make a decision on how much sky I want compared with how much ground I want. And so I'm going to do something like, and the ground comes away like so. So I'm going to put my house somewhere. Let's pop the house in. Simple cottage. This is remember that where the smaller of the two cottages. I'm going to have the cottage going down a little bit perspective-wise, just down at a slight angle. So it's going to be something like that. Let's put a chimney in there because I'm going to make it a bit more like this. And a chimney here, like that. A couple of windows, maybe Velux type windows. I mean, something like that. Bring this down a bit. Okay, and right. So we're looking at the water that separates the Isle of Gigha from the Mull of Kintyre. You know, Paul McCartney's song, The Mull of Kintyre. Well, that's the Mull of Kintyre. And so you need a ferry to get to this island. So let's just put a little bit of water in here. If anything's going to be straight, it's going to be the water. And then we've got some mountains here. I don't need to worry too much about something like that. What else do I want to put in my drawing? There's a little shed here, which I think is quite nice. It reflects the light coming down. And there's some sort of a break in the field there. I'm going to be putting in fences and maybe a telegraph post, that sort of thing here, but I don't need to draw that in at the moment. I think I've maybe drawn enough there for this one. Okay, that's fine. Right, if I move down here on this one, let me just get my head around this. I think I'll leave a bit more room for sky. So if I do, say, if I do something like that going away, and I want to feature this cottage. So let's put that, say, there. Whilst I juggle with this, I think I'll make it a bit bigger than I've made it. So let's do something like a chimney on there. Couple of Velux windows. Now you can make, if you're going for the one that's closer up, you can make that larger. I kind of wanted that to be larger. Yeah, I want that. Sorry, forgive me a minute. I want that to be a larger building. It's not let's have it a bit more dominant. So, right, the chimney. And another chimney here. Which makes it a little bit larger, I think, the whole thing. Yeah, that'll do. Put my beadluxes in. Something like that. Right. And think about the water. The Mull Cantare over there. I'm going to have these mountains quite dominant here, maybe something like that. And whether I'll bring that bit of light in the building there, so you can see it's a more dominant building there. I think that's as far as I will go with both my drawings, and hopefully by now you will have chosen which you think you're going to do. I'll let you now just get that done. Maybe if you'd be good enough to just chat in and say you're ready, then that's really useful, because when we're all ready, I'll move on to the second step, which is the washes. When we start throwing some water and paint around.
Can you move the pictures so we can see them a little more, the photographs?
The photographs you're talking about, yeah. That's
yeah, thank you.
that. Well, this one can stay there because it's just the one building. And if I put that one there, shall I? Is that okay? I didn't want to
can't see
cover
the
up
bottom one. Can you just do the whole photograph so we can see it? Right?
Well, I will do. I mean,
okay.
you can put in more buildings if you like. I'm just putting in the one, but in
Okay.
fact they're all the same. There's a line of them which are photographed, just to show that there are a lot of buildings like that on the Isle of Gigha. Okay, but there we are. Is that all right?
That's good. There was one question, somebody said they didn't want to put a telephone pole in, but can they balance it up with things like people? And if they do that, what's the scale? Just
please.
a quick question.
Whatever you like. I'm keeping this fairly desolate. And I know when I was out, every time I went out, there was nobody else around. And by all means, if you want to put people in, that's great. But I know when I did my practice ones, I brought in fencing and poles, telegraph poles. I think that was what I did primarily, and that's what I'm going to do for this one.
I'm ready, Georgie.
Excellent. It's just another hill back here, which I'm going to pop in.
There are quite a few readies already.
Oh, well, yeah, I would expect so, yes. But once you've decided where you're going, it's I'm suggesting you do a small amount of painting, drawing. In a sense, we're going to be drawing later on, but we'll be drawing with a brush necessarily than a pencil. Nothing will stop you after you've started a painting putting in some pencil marks if you think it would help. But I think that's as far as I want to go. So I think that's got it now. That's the whole landscape with the building. The buildings are very much a focal point because of the light that I'm hoping to get on it in both of them, but it's much more dominant here. So this next step is about putting the light colors on, often called the washes here. There's going to be the use of a lot of water, a lot of the sort of colors underlying that you want to be dictating so much of what the light is about are going to be in at this early stage of the painting. And that light that we've got dictated to by the sky here affects everything else around here as well, particularly things that are reflective, reflected and so forth. So as when we did our Suffolk sunrise over the sea, we had quite obvious reflections on the sea of the sunrise. Here, well, here we don't, apart from the water there, which is reflecting the sky, but in a different way from the Suffolk one. Here we've got some land in the front, and we're just conscious that what the light is, and so this wash stage is what the light is really important, and very useful to throw in here any colors that you might think light colors that you might think will influence what's happening to the atmosphere of this painting. So I'm going to be using this larger of my mop brushes. It's a 1-inch squirrel hair brush. It holds lots of water and it goes to a good fine point. I've got a smaller version here, which I'll be using at some stage, but for this stage where I'm slopping water around and so forth, we're happy to make this as wet as you like. We will dry it at the end of this, but happy to make it as wet as you like as you go on. Anything that you want to be white or very light in your painting, then if it's possible to leave it, the paper clear, that is fine. If not, it doesn't matter too much because it'll depend what you put around it. So I'm going to begin with the colors I'm going to start with. I'm going to use this cerulean blue, and the reason I'm using that is because it's a cooler blue than my other blues. I've got a cobalt here, and I've got an ultramarine blue here. They increasingly have more red in them, therefore they become warmer as they go along. This is much more of a greeny blue than the ultramarine, which is much more of a reddy blue. So I'm going to use the cerulean and mix that with, I'll mix that with probably some of this light red. So it'll give me some kind of a violet or purple. And then I'm going to tone that down, gray it down, by bringing in some yellow, and it probably use this raw sienna. So let's see, I'll see how I go with this cerulean blue, with some of this lighter red, and then some of this raw sienna to gray it down. But I'm also, I'm going to take a liberty with this photograph, and I'm going to bring in this photograph, you can see clouds here, and whether it was as a result of the camera or whatever, it's just a little bit too gray for me. And I want to bring in something which suggests that there's some sort of light going on behind all these clouds. I'm going to probably bring in some sort of yellow in here, very subtly, and maybe bring in some sort of darker red here. And I'm going to do all of that at this early wash stage. So I'll do this painting first, and then I'll do this painting. And I'll go through the procedure. So that's it. I'm just working out how I'm going to do this with you. Yeah, I may flip from one to the other a little bit, but I think you should be able to work out what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to start slopping some paint around now. I picked up, you can all see this, with this mop brush, I picked up some water, go to my cerulean blue. What's an alternative cerulean? Well, you could use cobalt if you haven't got it. You might add a little bit more of the yellow, just if you wanted to cool out. So I've got, it's quite a bright color here, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of this red. Now, careful with the red because it's very powerful, the red, and it will go brown very quickly if you or very sort of purpley brown. So I'm going to bring a little bit here, and I get something which is a grade down. It looks quite different from the cerulean there, and I'll bring a little bit of yellow in just at this stage, just to grade that, further graze it down. So I've made some sort of I've got to shift my laptop out of the way so it doesn't get covered in paint. There we go. Right, and I'm going to paint it in a sort of downward across style here. Keep it as light as you want. If it's too dark, you can add water to change that. But
Mike, can you just say what the light red is? Is it Windsor red?
It's Windsor red.
Yeah.
But cadmium red would be good. I'm going for, of the two reds I've got here, one is crimson and one is a more orangey red. So I've gone for the more orangey red here. And I've got this sort of light gray. Let's just put that down here. And I'm going to take that down to remember, I was trying to keep, if I can keep some of these little white bits, the chimney and around it, if I can do that. So I'm going to do that a little bit and take that, and I'll bring it down across where the water is and like so. Now that's a lot of water across there at the moment. I've added more water here, so it's a little bit darker here. And what I think I can, when I bring paint onto that now, I'm going to do a little bit more paint. I want to bring in some stronger paint than is necessary. Just a moment, I need to get some tissues. So,
can you remind me what yellow you used, please, Mike?
Yeah, it's raw sienna. So I'm picking up some raw sienna, and I'm going to bring some of that into here. I spoke about changing things a little bit from the photograph, where I want to give some suggestion of what's happening to the light behind all the dark clouds. So I painted that in here, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of crimson red and put that down that end. Now those are very subtly put in. When they dry, they will become much lighter. But down here, going back and making a stronger color with my cerulean, a bit of that red, and some crimson. So this keeping the paint as, let's just put something in along here. So I'm tending to sweep around, and the paint is kind of painting itself as it goes along. I'm going to make this a little bit stronger just here. Let's go back to cerulean red, and I'll put in something like burnt sienna here, just make it a bit darker. Now, in fact, I'll put some cobalt in. I just want to bring something a bit darker in. Just a few little lines here. Right, let's leave that for a moment, the sky. I'll come back and see what it does. It will sort of paint itself. Down here, for the rest of it, I will pick up a little bit of raw sienna, just a little bit, and take that maybe over there a wee bit. And here, for the foreground, I'm going to use this convenience green of mine, which is sap green. Here, sap green. And if you don't have that, you could mix, say, cobalt with cadmium or Aurelian yellow. Just you get a similar color. But the thing is that when I pick up this convenience green, sap green, it's too bright. I talked about the gray skies and everything influencing the overall feel of the painting. So what I want to do is I want to gray it down a bit, and I'll add a little bit of burnt sienna, just to gray it down a little bit. And I want this to be really quite light. Let's gray it down a bit more. And I'm going to sweep that over this area here. Happy to leave gaps. In fact, no bad thing just to leave some gaps here. And that's probably all the washes that I need to worry about just at the moment. It's just right. I'm going to ending up with a blue. So I'm going to kind of repeat that here by doing the same thing. So let's just go to the cerulean. On a bit too green. Let's go back to cerulean. Add a little bit of red. That's pretty red. Gone too red. And add some. Okay, let's just see what that is. Now here, I want to keep those white chimney pots, if I can, particularly with this more detail that I can see of the and bring some of this raw sienna down here. Remember, I put that in on this top one, a little bit of that, a little bit of crimson, get some color going in here. Let's bring that down onto the sea. And I'm going back and I'm just putting a really light color over the house, and then my green. Remember, I did the green with this sap green. It was too bright, so I've added some burnt sienna there just to make it a little grey down a little bit, and I pop that in there. So both paintings, or let's do a bit more to the sky, I think. I'll just come up with something darker grey, which is, let's bring in the cobalt, add a little bit of this red, too much, grey it down with some burnt sienna, raw sienna that is. Let's just pick up a bit of, leave the chimneys out if you can, and we'll just pop in some. It's all painting itself because it's all wet, and the thing to do here, really, as much as possible, is to let it paint itself. But at some stage before we begin the next painting, let's we'll dry it off with a hairdryer or whatever. Right, that's both paintings that I have put down here with the washes. If I added anything with a wet brush at this stage, I'd end up with these cauliflowers or blooms or something like that, which you may not want. So once you've got something wet on your paper, if you're going to add anything to it, then try and make it a sort of a stronger paint consistency. So there we are. Exactly how we're going to make these skies work, we'll deal with as we go on. But we've put in something of an a background light that's going on here, and something of a darkness here, something of this sort of feels and everything that we've got here, which I haven't made too bright, and the water reflects something of the sky. Good luck, everybody. Oh, it's quite a interesting exercise doing two paintings at once. I don't think I'll do it every week, Lois.
Somebody's asking, did you wet the whole paper?
No, I didn't wet the whole paper. Because I had lots of water in my brush and I was slopping it around. I will wet some of the paper later on, either with my brush or with a spray, because I'll be, if you like, I'll be reviving is the only word I can think of, what is there. But at this wash stage, yes, I could have used water all over it, but I knew I was going to be throwing so much water around anyway, so I decided that would do the job just as well. Now, I found when I was doing my practice paintings of this that I was going backwards and forwards, tweaking this a little bit to try and get the atmosphere as I wanted it, and depending on what the sky was doing, then you change things around. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to leave the sky just for the moment. I may well come back to that. Or by this third step now is about putting darker colors on and doing the bulk of the painting. The final step after this is details. Okay, so each of these steps is important. You know, the one we've just done, the washes and everything, but this one now we're putting some darker colors on here, and I may well come back and do something to the sky at the end of this step. But before that, I'm going to paint and put some darker colors on everything, the hills in the background, the building, the foreground, and do all of that, and then see what it looks like, because that will have affected things before I decide what I'm going to do with the sky, if anything, and then that will be the end of this stage. So, as I said, I'm going to leave the sky deliberately for the moment, and I'll more or less work from top downwards. So I'll begin with this painting and come down, and then this painting and come down, and so I'm going to put in the distant Mullican Tyre here, and I'd like that. It's quite good in the source photograph. You see that in the distance it goes very blue, and then as it comes up a bit closer to you, we get to see a little bit of maybe some fields or something like that. But it's pretty distant, the whole thing. So I'm going to make it largely blue, just coming into a little bit of brown there, and then bring in this hill and what's going on around the other side of the building, and then move on down this way. So for this, I'm going to move to my smaller mop brush. Again, it's squirrel. Imitation squirrel is pretty good. I do have some of those, but squirrel is fine. It picks up water. It I can use it as a point, and I am going to do the distant hills that run here. So let's just do something on here. I'll use a cerulean blue. Let's just see what I get out of this. I want it to be a sort of bluey purple, and I'll use the same red and get, now that's 2 red. So I think let's try some cobalt. Maybe cobalt would have been better. I'll mix in some cobalt with it. What am I getting out of that? Let's have a look. I'm going to bring that down around the house and down here. So let's just bring in, yeah, that's going to be fine. Something like that. These hills in the background, around the building. There's some nice light on the top of that roof, so we'll make sure we leave that clear, and that's sort of coming down here. And what I'll do now is I'll just add a bit of water and lighten it a wee bit. So, and I'll add a bit of brown, just to change it a little bit. Here we are, it's got a little bit more brown in it. The straight line, the only straight line in this painting really is the down bit of the Mullican tile. I've added a bit more brown to that mixture. Leave a few little gaps there, maybe. Now I'm conscious that things dry lighter than they seem. So am I happy with that? Yeah, let's just see how that goes. It's sort of gone some blue into brown, and I've left a few little gaps there. I'm going to come on down here to this hill behind the this little hut, and I picked up some burnt sienna and add a bit of blue to it. And I've got a cobalt blue and a little bit of burnt sienna, something along those lines. Let's just put in something here. I'm probably going to make this darker later on, but if I bring in something now, just a little thing here. If you look at the photograph and you look at this line where the field meets the house, so you can see even on this photograph some sort of little light bits, which are fences catching the light or something. So so you could do something like, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I'm just leaving a few little light gaps there, yeah, which may or may not be useful to us later on when we're wanting to have little bits of light catching the odd post. And here, this goes up to the house, something like that. It comes around here. I'll do the same thing here, just bring it a little bit here, which defines the edge of the house. So we've got something there which is slightly warmer brown. It'll depend later on when we come into the details just how much of that we want to keep. And now I'll move down and do something here. Well, where around shall I do this? Yeah. Here I'm going to bring in a darker green so that this becomes the lighter green through it. So let me show you. I'll go to my convenience green, which is this sap green, which if you don't have, remember, you could mix something like this with a cobalt and an Aurelian or a cadmium yellow or something like that. So I've got that green. I very rarely ever use my convenience green just as it is, but I'll mix things with it. So I'm going to mix this burnt sienna with it, which sort of grays it down and makes it sort of rather muddy and more olive green. I'm wanting to sweep this over here to give the idea of things. I'm just wondering whether to use this brush or, yeah, I'll use this brush here. So, so I'm going to sweep it over so that I don't completely cover, and I'm leaving little bits showing through, gaps like that. I can come back to those a bit later on. So that is some of them I'll make flatter. Let's just like so, and kind of hopefully will give us some idea as if the light is going on the field. But and now whilst that's just a little bit wet, all this this sort of, I don't know what you call that, so sort of they're not weeds. I can't remember if they're not thistles. I'm not quite sure what they are, but I'm going to bring. Say that again.
Hedgerow.
Well, it's that sort of material. I'm going to use this brush. It could be a rigger. This is my dagger brush. It just holds more water, and it's this is quite a large one. You might have a smaller one, or I mean, I could use this brush, but I'm going to use that, and I'm going to pick up some burnt sienna. This is all just a little bit wet here. Let's make that quite strong. Burnt sienna, maybe add a little bit of cobalt so it's not too bright. And let's just put in. Now, the marks I'm making with this brush are quite arbitrary in a sense because I can't control it, but there's some sort of a border going down there. There's a few little, and there'll be a few sort of little marks in the foreground. There'll be places where it might touch some wet paint, and that's fine. It will just sort of bleed into it. Let's just put something there, I think, talking about balancing the picture out a bit. Something there. So I've made a few hedgerow or what, but I'm sorry, I just can't think what it is. And I'll be doing something on there. So let's just, before we finish off on this one, take a look at the building. And then I'll move and do something not dissimilar to this. So the building, oh, it's got in the photograph, it's got a green top. I think I'm going to I'm going to make it a red top. I don't know what it is. Let's just let's pick up. Let's go to my burnt sienna. Add a bit of red to it. I mean, you can put in what you like. Something very light here. I'm going to just, if I thought about it, this might have been a good thing to have done when I did my wash, but I didn't think about it. So we've got some sort of red building here, and and this little reflection here, I'm just going to pick up something that's on my palette, a little bit of blue. Let's just take that, just a little bit blue, just something like that. You can see I'm sort of making these up, so as you wish. So I've just popped a little bit of that in, and now I'm going to pop a little bit of shadow in here. Now this is not your Venetian, your Tuscan sunshine here. We don't have in this atmosphere very strong shadows, but there are shadows depending on how much you're going to make use of this light here. So I'll mix a fairly bog standard shadow color up for this, which is I'm going to use cobalt and a bit of burnt sienna. Let's just see what I get. That's gone too brown. Okay. Make it a bit bluer. So I've got that here, and we've got the light coming down on here this way. So I'm going to bring the shadow down one side of the chimney, down this side of the building. Now, when you're working down this side of the building, remember what we did here? We left little bits that you could use for something light. So let's just, if I do that, that might give us something interesting later on that's catching a little bit of light. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So a little bit of a shadow under that. That's now the shadow. Remember, I said it's not a Tuscan shadow. So if I take it underneath the roof here, and it's a little bit harsh there, it makes it look as if it is a strong shadow. So I'll just grab a little bit of water on my brush and touch it at the bottom here. And that should soften it a little bit. You see that it's sort of painted in. Let's see what that does for it. Do I want to put any more shadow anywhere else? Just for the moment, I'll put some here, but I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this building, this little shed. Let's put something here. Doesn't matter. Okay. That's really all I'm going to do just at the moment with this painting. Let me do this painting and then decide whether I'm going to do anything else here for the to finish this off. So I'll do this painting. Now, I'm going to do much the same sort of thing, maybe a little more dramatic because it's in our face. So I won't touch the sky. I'm going to go through the same sort of business that I went through before. I picked up some cobalt. Was it cobalt? Yes, I think it was cobalt. A little bit of this red. Oh, gone too red. Let's bring in some more blue. And that's a little bit too mauvey for me. So I can grey that down by bringing something yellow, say some raw sienna in. Grey it down. Is that going to be what I want? No reason why I shouldn't make this quite dark. A bit more cobalt. Let's see what this does. So this is the distant hills in the background. Go round the chimney. This little brush is great because I can use the point of it to get some detail going on here. Let's come on down here, bring that around the chimney. And I've added a bit of water to it here. Just take that up, and I'm going to bring in some brown. Suggest that maybe it's coming towards us a bit more than right. It's quite dark there going in. It's the water that's softening it out. So come into this hill that's behind here. I think that I think, what did I use? I think I made it browner. Yeah, I think I made it browner. So I've just added more burnt sienna and here some burnt sienna and cobalt. Let's come around that roof that we wanted to glisten in the sun. Leave these little gaps that I was telling you about. Which may or may not be of some value to us. They won't do any harm though. I'll bring some of that here. This is just a suggestion of the hill going down behind it. And well, whilst I'm on the building, and then I'll come on down here. I'll just do this building, and I'm going to make the roof. I'm going to try. I've got some burnt umber here. Let's just see what that's going to be like. So let's just put some of that over here around my veluxes, around the chimney bits, this white stuff here, a little bit here, and let's pop in some shadow now. I'll use the shadow. I haven't used, as I have very frequently used in other sessions, any ultramarine blue here. And that is because I'm just trying to keep the red out of the picture. It's interesting that quite often when I paint in this country and in Scotland or Ireland or somewhere like that, I'll use colours like the phthalo blue, which have got a little more green in it. But often abroad in the sunshine, I'll use ultramarine blue. So I have deliberately just used cobalt, and I'll add a little bit of burnt sienna. There's some red in that anyway. Here, and a bit more. So here is my shadow color. Bring that down here. Remember these little interesting bits that might be useful to us, you know, these little sort of bits here, which we can lose them a little bit later. Yeah, that's probably about right. And this one, there was the old trick of softening it that I mentioned before. Which I'll do again just to show you. I've just got some clean water, or as clean as I can make it, and just popped in, touching here, and it will sort of soften it down a little bit there. So it's not a really hard edge shadow on that. And up here, what shall I do? I'm not, yeah, I'm going to change just put a little bit of that maybe as the roof, and let's do some of the green here. Remember, I used my convenience green, sap green, and grade it down with a little bit of brown, some burnt sienna, say, just so it's not too vivid. I'll make that a little bit stronger because things dry lighter. Okay, and let's very difficult to control this brush, so it's just there's not so much ground to paint here as there was in the other one. And lastly, I'm going to put some of this brown in here. Now it's quite wet at the moment, so let's make that quite strong. Take the water out of my brush as much as I can. Make this quite strong. That's too bright, much too bright. So let's add some blue to it. I don't know, that's a little bit of water I need. I need a bit more water. It's gone too dry. Let's see if I can bring in something in the foreground here. So I'm not necessarily going to put that in. I've just something in the foreground. Now, where it's touching wet paint, of course, it's going to do some pretty weird things, but that's fine. That could all work to our advantage. I think I'll put something in there. Right. That's that's both paintings at once. I hope you find it interesting, me doing the two paintings, because although you hopefully will be doing just one of them, there may be things that you are relevant, or you'll see again what's going on here. But that's now for me the third step of the 4 that I'm going to do for this painting, and I'm going to hand it over to you to finish off. I hope there were some tips there and sort of using the paint and the water and everything else. The next step is going to be various details. Right, this last step in the painting, I've said that it's details, but I was just thinking that I wonder if we can find another word for it. It's really to do whatever you need to do to make the painting work.
Finishing touches.
Yeah, that may be, yes, whatever, to make it work. So, and you know, with the blue skies of Tuscany and all that sort of thing, and Greece, and if you're painting in those countries, you have a fairly predictable type of light, which is really nice, of course. But in Scotland, it never stays the same for 2 minutes, and similarly with this painting, I've just got a feeling I'm going to put in some stuff here that for compositional reasons and all sorts of other reasons, but it's not until I've done that it'll sort of stand back and look at the painting and see whether I want to do any more. And I've got a feeling this certainly happened when I did my practice paintings. When I did that, I stood back and looked at it, and I went back and did something to the sky, both skies. So that may well be what happens here. But hopefully I've got in some interesting colours there that will show through in some ways. Okay, right, let's get a tissue. So I may well almost certainly be doing something to the skies here, but not just yet. So I'm going to I'll work on this painting first, and I just want to add a bit more drama. I think this hill in the background, not the distant hills, but the hill in the background, I think that needs to be darker. I'm going to put a tree in here. Kind of like the trees I remember seeing on Gigha, this one is, and then bring in whatever details, something extra here. I think I want to bring something here to balance it up. Right, so let's pick up this brush. I'm going to be using this paintbrush in a moment. Now, let me go and get something to show you. In the notes that Lois has sent you, it talks about giving a bad hairbrush to a paintbrush. So this is a pretty cheap little child. So I've got a whole load of them here for my grandchildren. Little cheap brush. It's great. It's great. But I've taken the scissors to it, and given it a haircut, really bad haircut. And it's come out like that, and that is going to give me, I hope, some sort of really arbitrary marks that will suggest the tree in both paintings. I think certainly this painting. I can do the same thing by painting with, say, a brush like this, and just opening it up and painting, dabbing down like that as well. But I'll see how I go with that. In fact, I might use this brush, my mop brush, for this painting, and this brush for this painting. We'll see. But first of all, I'm going to look at what's going on back here in the background. It's pretty dark in the photograph, and I think I could do well by making it dark still. So I'm going to go to some burnt umber here. You could use raw umber. Burnt umber just happens to have more red in it. So, you know, it could be that raw umber is a better color to use on the basis that we're trying to keep things cool. And I'm going to darken that with some neutral tint. That's this color up here. Now, if you don't have neutral tint, you could use Payne's Gray. Careful if you're using black, because it could just swamp it. But neutral tint is more of a transparent paint than Payne's Gray, but it'll do a good job all the same. So I've got that, and put in. Yeah, I'm going to make that darker. And if I want to leave any little bits showing, that's fine. That might be quite good. If I want to suggest there's some little if I want to suggest there's some little things sticking over the hill, that's fine. I'm going to take that down here around my shed. Just leaving a little bit there. So it's just a few little touches. It's not actually describing anything specific, but making it darker will bring out the light that's on that probably metal roof there, isn't it? Something like that. Something like that's made that a little bit darker. Let's just carry it around, a few little marks there. That's quite good because it shows off the edge of the building, and yeah, I might put a post or something there. So it's well, whilst I'm at it, I will put in. I'll pick up lots more neutral tint and shove that underneath here. Just that little bit. Again, it's it's emphasizing the light shining on that little bit of the hut. Strong neutral tint. I'm just popping it into a couple of little areas. Why not? Around there, just to vary it a bit. Okay, so that's done something to emphasize the building a little bit there. Okay, let's look at this tree. Again, I did this when I was doing my practice pictures. So I want to put a tree here, which is behind this building. So it shows up the building, and it helps to emphasize this little bit of ground as being middle distance and push what's in the background further away. Colors. There's my my convenience green, and if I add some cobalt to it, am I getting what I want? It's not Viridian, but it's quite different from this green of the fields. So yeah, so I've mixed up some of this sap green with some cobalt blue, and I'm going to paint in this a tree here. So let's just, it's going to have more light on it on the right hand side, this tree. It's a little bit too bright, that tree, for me. So I'll add a bit more blue, and I'll add a little bit of burnt sienna. Yes, just a little bit too bright. Let's just see if that works. That's a little better. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so I'm coming around the chimney and around this building, and I'm not going to use my bad haircut brush for this. I'll use the other one, but I am going to use this brush by. Can you see? I'm just dabbing down on it a little bit here. Now it's going to be darker down the left-hand side, so I won't paint all of that, but however big you want to make the tree, it's entirely up to you. Now I'm going to make it darker down the other side by bringing in some neutral tint and maybe a bit more blue. Yeah, and just bringing that in here. It's very strong. I've brought it in very strong, and I can even drop it in one or two little places where I've already put the paint. But hopefully you'll see that I'm trying to get the idea that there's some light and dark. In fact, let's put a little bit of dark down here underneath it, using strong paint. Am I happy with that? All right, that's a tree in there.
Can you just revise the two colours you used for the dark?
Well, I use sap green, my convenience green, which if I didn't have it, I'd probably have used cobalt and cadmium or Aurelian. And then I added a bit, I just played, I added a bit more cobalt, but what I didn't want was it to be too bright. So to tone that down, as I've toned a lot of things down in these paintings, I brought in some red in effect, some burnt sienna, and that toned it down. I put that in where I wanted the light area, and then where I wanted it dark just for a moment, I brought in some neutral tint and just dropped a little bit in there. We'll see. I'm going to do pretty much the same thing here, so it'll be interesting to see how it works here. Right. Now I want some other detail here. I am going to put something here, composition-wise, telegraph pole or something like that. Yeah, we'll do that. So it might be worth playing with my rigger at this stage here, and let's mix up a dark color. I'll go for burnt sienna, cobalt. If I want to make it darker, I'll add some neutral tint. Let's just see what that's going to give me. And just making a few little marks. I'll come and do something to the building in a moment. Just whilst I've got this here, I'll add a few. Let's put a telegraph pole here, just something like that, and let's put one in here. So a little bit of courage. Decide I'm going to put something about this height, and then run it down. That's my telegraph pole, and let's pop in some fencing, some marks. And I'll come and do something up here. But before I do, I'm just going to my building, and I'll use some of this dark color, but maybe make it a little bluer, and add one or two little accents here. Things like that, maybe. All right, come back to this. This, whatever we ended up calling it, bracken, fern, whatever it is, I just want to beef that up and add something to it. Now, it's all quite dry, and I'd quite like some bits of it to be a little bit wetter. So I'll go back to my burnt umber, add a bit of blue to that, maybe. It's okay, and
excuse me, what color is the pole and the fence, please?
They're
Yes.
They're a brown mixture, really. Whatever brown you want, burnt sienna, burnt umber, something. But I've added blue to them just so that they're not too stark. And right. And here I've mixed up something pretty similar to that. And either by using the edge of my brush a little bit here, I want to create some dampness so I can paint into, because it's all a bit, it's all a little bit dry at the moment. So let's just, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If you want to mess up your field a little bit, then that is fine. So I've popped in some wet brown there, but so what I'm going to do now is mix up a dark, something very dark, and touch that in different places. So it adds some different values to, particularly in the front here, where it's right in the foreground. Okay, just mess it up a little bit. a few of these things, particularly up in the foreground, right? So you can do as much of that as you'd like. I'm almost thinking compositionally here. Let's just put something a bit darker here, some sort of a shed, I don't know what it is, lean-to on that side of the building. And oh, we can see something of a telegraph wire. I'm going to run something across there. Another post there, maybe. That'll be enough. Just some suggestion of. I'm going to make some of this a little bit darker. Sort of against the light, isn't it, of the water? Right, that's enough for the moment. I'm going to let that dry and come back and see what I'm going to do to the sky. Now I'm going to move down here, and if you've been dealing with a more a bigger close-up of this, then that's fine. So I'll do pretty much the same thing as I've done already. I'm going to make this a bit darker here. So what I did, and I'll do the same again, is I went to my burnt umber. I was making something pretty dark. Burnt umber. Let's add a bit of blue to that. And a little bit of neutral tint, maybe. Let's see what that gives me back here. I'll make that a bit darker. Okay, so this is the sort of hill immediately behind the building. I've just used that to go underneath the roof. Right, we're in close now here, so I think I can make a bit more of a telegraph pole up here. I'll make that a bit stronger. Okay, and picking up some neutral tint, I'm going to put that strong neutral tint, just put that under here. And maybe a little bit. Okay, so that's making a statement about that as being pretty dark. Bring it around here. Now, before I do anything else, I'm just going to, now I'll do the tree now, and then I'll do the building, and then I'll finish it off, and then we'll look at the skies. Tree. Let's go back and do much the same as we did before, except it's much closer up to us here. And I have in mind that I want this to be a more dramatic picture, but we'll see. So I'm going to go to my convenience sap green here. That's what I did with that. I added some cobalt blue. Still not sure that's going to be dark enough, so make it a bit stronger. Nope, a bit more. And I'm bringing in some burnt sienna just to grey it down. That's a graze it. That makes it more olivey. Right, now I'm going to bring that in around here. So it's going to be light on this side, dark on that side. This brush is is not the best brush for getting straight edges, but I can work around it. Let's just work around the tree. I want that to be stronger. Let's make that a bit stronger. The pigment stronger. Okay. I'll do this now without painting over too much my building. What a great brush this is, with having had such a dramatic haircut. Traumatized it, no doubt. Now we're close up, so let's maybe even suggest a few branches. Come on down here. I'm going to bring in some darkness here, so I'm going to my neutral tint, put that in here. Let's make that a bit stronger. And I think that's about far enough for that. And just pure neutral tint, just drop some in here. And whilst it's wet, it will be painting itself. Okay, that's a good size tree. Now back to, we're doing quite well. We're coming up to the 2-hour mark, Lois. So imagine how quickly we've done this. It's been one painting, right? Right, I'm going to bring in some detail to the cottage, so I'll mix cobalt with some burnt sienna. It's a bit green because of all the stuff I got on my brush, but it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. Yeah. Let's see what we is this I hope that's not too strong. A few little marks to suggest that the Velux has got some it sits above the roof a bit. Now, if you want to just take away the intensity of something, I've just used my finger to press it down. Let's just put in something. Okay. Right, I'm going to bring in some fence here. I've got to decide what I'm going to do here. I'm not convinced I'm going to. No, I'm not going to put a telegraph pole there, but I'll put something there. Let's see what we've got. I'll see if I can do this all with my. I'm just going to wash this water. It's gone a bit too green. I'll just take some of that green out of it. Right, so pick up some cobalt blue. So I'm now I'm doing posts and fencing and things like that. Burnt sienna and cobalt blue will give me something dark, but do I want it a bit darker still? Let's just add a little bit of neutral tint to it. Let's see what that does now. So here we are. I'm going to put something on the side of, that can be a bit darker still. Let's go back to this and then whatever you want. Some sort of fencing going around there. Now we are close up, so maybe a suggestion of a bit more detail. Now, what shall I put around here? Let's start off with some fencing and see where we go. I'll put some fencing up here. Make that a bit browner. So you'll each be working out what you want to do with your own paintings, of course. And just to break up, offer something in the foreground here. Maybe you don't need to do too much, maybe just a few little marks. I'm going to make that shadow not too much, just a little bit more there, because of the tree. I just feel that this shadow wants to be a little bit stronger, just adding to it a little bit. Just tone it down. There's usually lots of junk around these places, so let's add a little bit of junk, littering. Yes, I wanted something in the foreground just to be stronger, just to bring it forwards a little bit. So, okay, now I'm going to dry these, and I'm just going to do something with the sky very quickly on both accounts, and I'm looking at the paintings and seeing how they've turned out. So give me a moment to dry this. I think maybe if you get to the point now where you've done it, but you're going to see what I do with my sky, then that will be a good idea. So let me give you a few minutes just to pick up and get to where I am here, and then hopefully we'll see that we can add increased atmosphere to this painting depending on what we do with the sky, if anything. Let's give it a brown door, a red door or something. Yeah, red door. So the first thing I'm going to do is spray the water on here. Now, as with all things with watercolor, it is all about the water and the color. That's why it's called watercolor. So where the water is, how much is on the paper especially, but then how much will be on my brushes is something I need to be careful of. Now, if I squirt too much of this on, then I'm going to flood it too much, but I do want it to be moist so that I don't have to bring a whole lot of more water onto it. Remember, if you're not using this and you want to just use a brush, that's fine. You do pretty much what I'm doing here. So I'm going to just having a look at it. It's quite a bit of water there. But I think that's fine. And I said that I quite like this idea. I don't know whether I can do something about that here, but so I'm going to, I think I'll go for the cobalt, and I'll mix, let's try some burnt sienna in there. That's too brown. Let's come here, blue. So I've got quite a lot of water in my brush at now. I want to get rid of some of that. Let's just get that a little bit darker. It's a tricky old business, this. And now, because these are translucent colors, I can paint over it with some confidence that I'm going to be able to have some of the colors shining through. But I'm going to bring in some stronger color now. Just going to make that a little more dramatic. So maybe pick up let's try picking up this, a bit of neutral tint here. That might be a bit of neutral tint. I've got quite a dry brush, and maybe that's as much as I want to do for the moment on that. Hopefully that's it'll be sort of painting itself a little bit, and we'll see what comes of that. Yeah. In fact, what I might do is I might pick up some of that color, and I'll just take it over this distant hill a little bit, just to darken that, then go up here, just something like that. Right, now this one, I'll do the same, and I'm going to bring some of that darkness over this whole area. So let's have a look what we're going to do here. Right, so I've brought in, let's add a little bit more water here. Right, and again, I'm going to use similar colors, so the cobalt blue and burnt sienna. How's that? But let's bring in some neutral tint. So I'm making this darker, neutral tint, and it's wet here. So let's bring that in, coming down up to the house, up to the tree. I hopefully some of the dampness there is going to work the paint around a bit. And I think I'm going to just make this distance a little bit bluer. And I'll water it down and bring that down onto the water here. Right. Oh. There is a big element of hoping for the best when you do this sort of thing. Let's make that a bit darker there. But that's as far as I'm going now. I've just got to sit down. It has lifted some of the paint in some places. This post and so forth, but if it's a problem to me later, I'll just drop a little bit of sharp paint in, but we'll just see how it goes. But now I'll leave it, go away and have a cup of tea and come back and rub out some little bits and pieces and send the pictures into Lois, and I'm sure you'll be the greatest critics that I'll ever have to face. So we'll just see how it goes. You go for it, hope for the best, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the light of the picture, the scene, whether it's this landscape, more landscapey one, or whether it is this one focusing more on the building, is just as with the Suffolk sunrise, informed so much, the atmosphere and the light is informed so much by the sky. And I think that's why I went back later on to do something to the sky, just to see how it worked with the rest of the building. I've just got a feeling it could be a little bit darker here in places, but I won't do anything more to it. We'll just see how it goes. It often looks completely different when you come back to it the next morning. Thank you, everybody.